My brother, a police officer, called me. "Where are you right now?" I said, "Home with my family." His voice dropped to a whisper. "Lock every door and window right now. Do not tell your husband why." I asked, "What is wrong?" "We just got a terrifying call about your husband. We are on our way." Just then I heard my daughter say, "Mommy, why is Daddy holding a knife in the garage?" I am Tiana, 34 years old, and until 10 minutes ago, I thought I was the luckiest woman in Atlanta. I own 3 medical spas, drive a Mercedes G-Wagon, and live in a $3 million estate in Buckhead with a husband who looks like he stepped out of a magazine. But as I stood in my kitchen staring at the granite countertops that cost more than my first car, my entire reality fractured. Before I tell you how my perfect Thanksgiving turned into a crime scene, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Please hit like and subscribe if you have ever trusted someone who turned out to be a complete stranger. It was Thanksgiving Eve. The house smelled of sage rosemary and the slow-roasted turkey I had been basting since noon. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the sun was setting over the skyline, casting a golden glow over our manicured lawn. My husband Andre was outside playing tag with our 6-year-old daughter Maya. I could hear her giggling, that pure, innocent sound that usually made my heart swell. I watched Andre scoop her up, spinning her around. To anyone looking in, we were the picture of black excellence. The power couple. The dream. But the phone in my hand felt like a block of ice. My brother Trey is a detective with the Atlanta Police Department. He never calls me while on duty unless it is an emergency involving Mom. When I saw his name on the caller ID, I answered with a smile, expecting him to ask what time to come over for dinner tomorrow. Instead, his voice was unrecognizable. It was cold, professional, and terrified. "Tiana, listen to me very carefully," he said. "Do not react, do not scream, just listen. We arrested a man 20 minutes ago on a DUI charge. He was trying to cut a deal. He gave us a name. He said he was hired to make a robbery look like an accident tonight at your address. The client is Andre." My knees nearly gave out. I gripped the edge of the island so hard my knuckles turned white. "A robbery?" "No." Trey said the word, cutting through me like a blade. "A hit. The man is a professional cleaner. He said Andre wired him $50,000 this morning. The motive is the insurance policy. Is he armed?" The insurance policy. The memory hit me with the force of a physical blow. Just last month, Andre had convinced me to sign a new life insurance policy, $5 million. He had set up a romantic dinner, poured my favorite wine, and talked about building a legacy for Maya. He said it was responsible estate planning. He said he wanted to make sure our daughter was protected if anything ever happened to the queen of this castle. I had signed it. I had signed my own death warrant with the Mont Blanc pen he gave me for our anniversary. "I do not know," I whispered to Trey, watching Andre through the glass. He put Maya down and wiped sweat from his forehead. He looked toward the house, toward me. He smiled. It was the same charming, dimpled smile I fell in love with 7 years ago. Now it looked like the grin of a predator. "He does not like guns," I stammered. "We do not have one in the house." "Assume he is armed," Trey hissed. "SWAT is 10 minutes out. Traffic is a nightmare. You have to buy us time. Act normal. If he senses you know, he might panic and move the timeline up. Do not let him out of your sight. I love you, Tiana. Just breathe. I am coming." The line went dead. I stood there in the silence of my beautiful, expensive kitchen. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. Act normal. How could I act normal when I knew the man walking toward the back door had put a price tag on my life? I took a deep breath, forcing my face into a mask of calm. I was a businesswoman. I dealt with crises every day. I could do this. For Maya. I had to do this for Maya. The back door slid open. Andre walked in, bringing a gust of cool autumn air with him. He looked handsome in his casual cashmere sweater, the picture of a loving father and husband. "Smells amazing in here, babe," he said, walking up behind me. He wrapped his arms around my waist and kissed the side of my neck. My skin crawled. It took every ounce of willpower not to scream, not to grab the cast iron skillet and swing it at his head. Instead, I leaned into him, my body rigid. "Just finishing the prep," I said, my voice sounding surprisingly steady. "Where is Maya?" "She ran to the garage to get her scooter," he said, letting go of me to open the refrigerator. He grabbed a bottle of water. His hands were steady. How could his hands be steady? He was planning to watch me die tonight. I watched him take a sip, his Adam's apple bobbing. He looked around the kitchen, his eyes scanning the counters, looking for something. "What are you looking for?" I asked, wiping my wet hands on a towel. "Nothing," he said too quickly. "Just checking if you need help carving." I told him the turkey was not ready yet. He nodded, but his eyes kept darting back to the wooden knife block on the counter. I followed his gaze. The slot for the large chef's knife was empty. My breath caught in my throat. I had used that knife 10 minutes ago to chop vegetables. I had washed it and left it on the drying rack. I looked at the drying rack. It was empty. The knife was gone. Panic began to rise in my chest, hot and suffocating. Andre was still smiling, but there was a tightness around his eyes I had never noticed before. Or maybe it had always been there and I was just too blind to see it. He was not just a failing entrepreneur living off my money. He was a monster. And he was armed. "Why don't you go check on Maya?" I suggested, trying to get him out of the kitchen so I could find a weapon. Anything. A fork, a heavy vase. He shook his head. "She is fine. She knows not to go into the street. I want to be here with you. We should toast. To us. To family." He reached for the wine bottle on the counter. "The same wine we drank the night I signed the policy." "I need to use the restroom," I said, taking a step toward the hallway. He stepped in front of me, blocking my path. His smile did not reach his eyes anymore. "In a minute, babe. Have a drink with me first. You look tense. Are you okay?" "You seem shaking." "I am fine." I lied, just tired. I tried to step around him, but he moved with me, mirroring my steps. It was subtle, but it was aggressive. He was corralling me, keeping me in the kitchen, keeping me away from the front door. The realization chilled me to the bone. He was not waiting for the hitman. He was going to do it himself. The hitman was the backup plan, or maybe the hitman was just supposed to clean up the mess. "Just one drink, Tiana," he said, his voice dropping an octave. It sounded like a command. He poured the wine, his back to me. I saw his hand hover over my glass for a second too long. A small, quick movement. Did he drop something in it? A sedative, poison? He turned around and held the glass out to me. The dark red liquid swirled in the crystal. "Drink up," he said softly. "It will help you relax." I reached for the glass, my hand trembling uncontrollably now. I could hear sirens in the far distance, faint wails carried on the wind. Were they for me? Were they close enough? I took the glass. Andre watched me intently, his gaze fixed on my lips. I raised the glass, pretending to take a sip, but kept my lips pressed tight. I murmured, lowering the glass. "Delicious." He relaxed slightly. "Good," he said. "Now about that garage. I need to show you something. I think the water heater is leaking again. Can you come take a look?" The garage, soundproof, isolated, no windows. If I went into that garage, I was never coming out. "No," I said, stepping back. "Not now. I have to check the turkey." Andre set his glass down. The mask slipped completely. His face hardened into something unrecognizable. "Tiana, come to the garage. Now." He took a step toward me. At that moment, the back door slid open again. Maya ran in, her little face flushed from playing. She looked from me to Andre, sensing the tension in the room. "Mommy," she asked, her voice trembling. I rushed to her, putting myself between her and Andre. "What is it, baby?" She pointed toward the garage door, her eyes wide with confusion and fear. "Mommy, why was Daddy talking to himself in the garage, and why was he holding the big knife? He said he has to do it fast." Silence descended on the kitchen, heavy, suffocating, deadly. I looked at Andre. He was not looking at me anymore. He was looking at the garage door, knowing his cover was blown. He looked back at me, and this time there was no love, no pretense, no mask. Only pure, unadulterated hatred. "You should have just drank the wine, Tiana," he whispered. He reached behind his back. The sirens were getting louder, but they were not here yet. And Andre was. And he had the knife. Andre stepped fully into the kitchen, the sliding glass door clicking shut behind him. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the silent room. He was sweating small beads of perspiration gathering on his forehead, despite the cool autumn evening. His right hand remained tucked behind his back, hidden in the folds of his cashmere sweater. I knew what was in that hand. My favorite chef knife, the one I used to carve Sunday roasts, the one I had sharpened just last week. "Oh, this old thing," Andre said, noticing my gaze fixed on his hidden arm. He laughed, but the sound was hollow, lacking its usual warmth. "I was just checking the pipes in the garage sink. I thought I needed something to pry the valve open, but it turns out I did not." He slowly brought his hand forward. It was empty. My heart skipped a beat. He had tucked the knife into the back of his waistband. I could see the slight bulge under his sweater. He was not just holding it anymore. He was concealing it. He was hunting. I forced a smile, though my lips felt like numb rubber. "Well, dinner is almost ready," I said, my voice sounding thin and brittle. "Why do you not go wash up Maya and I will set the table?" "No," Andre said quickly, stepping between me and the hallway. Too quickly. He moved with a predator's agility, cutting off my escape route. "I want us to stay here, together. It is Thanksgiving Eve, Tiana. Families should be together, every second." He walked over to the island where I had left the glass of wine he poured. The red liquid shimmered under the recessed lighting. He picked it up and held it out to me again. "You did not finish your drink, babe. You need to relax. You are vibrating." I looked at the glass. Then I looked at him. His eyes were wide, manic, pleading with me to take the poison so he would not have to use the knife. It was a sick kind of mercy. He wanted me to fall asleep so he could stage the accident without a struggle. If I refused, things would get violent. And Maya was standing right there, clutching her teddy bear, watching us with confused, fearful eyes. I took the glass. The crystal felt heavy in my hand. I brought it to my lips. The smell of the Pinot Noir was overpowered by the metallic scent of my own terror. I tilted the glass, letting the liquid touch my lips, but I kept my teeth clenched shut. I mimed a large swallow, letting my throat bob, then lowered the glass. "Better?" Andre asked, watching me intently. "Much better," I lied. I pretended to cough, bringing a thick cloth napkin to my mouth to wipe my lips. In that split second, I spit the small amount of liquid that had passed my lips into the fabric. I folded the napkin quickly and shoved it into my pocket. "Daddy, I am hungry," Maya whined, pulling on Andre's pant leg. "Can we eat now?" Andre looked down at her. For a second I saw a flicker of hesitation, a ghost of the father he used to be. But then he looked at the clock on the microwave. The deadline was approaching. The hitman had failed, so now he was on a schedule. "Soon, princess," he said, patting her head. "But first, Mommy and Daddy need to go check the fuse box in the basement. The lights have been flickering." "No," I said, my voice sharp. The basement was a death trap. Soundproof, concrete floor, no windows. If he got me down there, I was never coming up. "We are not going to the basement, Andre. The lights are fine. I am taking Maya upstairs to wash her hands." I grabbed Maya's hand, gripping it tight enough that she yelped. "Come on, baby." I moved to push past him, but he grabbed my arm. His fingers dug into my bicep, painful and bruising. The pretense was fading. The mask was slipping off completely. "I said we stay together." He hissed, his face inches from mine. I could smell the stale coffee and fear on his breath. "Why are you making this difficult, Tiana? Why do you always have to be so difficult?" "Let go of me," I said, looking him dead in the eye. I channeled every ounce of authority I had built as a CEO. I was not a victim. I was Tiana Brooks and I was not going to die in my own kitchen. He hesitated. In that moment of standoff, my phone buzzed in my pocket. Once, twice. The vibration felt like a lifeline. Andre's eyes darted to my pocket. "Who is that?" he demanded. "Is that your brother?" "It is work." I lied. "Just a client." "Give it to me," he ordered, reaching for my pocket. Suddenly, the house plunged into darkness. The hum of the refrigerator died. The lights overhead vanished. The only illumination came from the moonlight filtering through the large windows, casting long skeletal shadows across the room. Andre had not cut the power. Someone else had. Or maybe he had set a timer on the breaker box. It did not matter. The darkness was his ally, not mine. "Run," I whispered to Maya. Andre lunged for us, but in the dark he tripped over the bar stool I had subtly kicked into his path earlier. He crashed to the floor with a heavy thud and a curse that made my blood run cold. I scooped Maya up into my arms, ignoring the burning in my muscles, and sprinted for the stairs. I did not look back. I could hear Andre scrambling to his feet. I heard the distinct metallic slide of a knife being pulled from a waistband. "Tiana," he roared. His voice was not human anymore. It was a demonic growl. "You cannot run from me. This is my house." I flew up the stairs, taking them two at a time. My breath came in ragged gasps. Maya was crying now, a high-pitched sound of pure terror. "Shh, baby, shh," I whispered, pressing her head into my shoulder. I reached the landing and turned left toward the master bedroom. It was the only room with a solid oak door and a heavy-duty lock. I slammed the bedroom door behind us and twisted the deadbolt, but I knew it would not hold him for long. He was a big man, and he was fueled by desperation and adrenaline. I ran to the walk-in closet, my sanctuary. Rows of designer shoes and handbags lined the walls, symbols of the success Andre despised. I pushed aside the rack of winter coats and pulled open the hidden panel behind the full-length mirror. It was not a true panic room, just a reinforced storage space for my jewelry and cash, but it was the safest place I had. I shoved Maya inside. She was shaking so hard her teeth chattered. "Mommy is... Daddy a monster?" she asked, her voice small and broken. I looked at her, my heart breaking into a million pieces. In that moment, I realized the man I married was dead. The thing chasing us was just a shell filled with greed and malice. "Stay here," I whispered. "Do not make a sound. No matter what you hear, do not scream." I climbed in beside her and pulled the mirror panel shut, just as the bedroom door exploded inward. Bam! 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 He was throwing his body weight against the door. I heard the wood splinter. Then silence. Heavy footsteps entered the room. They were slow, deliberate, the footsteps of a man who knew his prey was trapped. "I know you are in here," Tiana, Andre called out. His voice was calm now, terrifyingly calm. It echoed off the walls of the bedroom. "Come on out, babe. Let's talk about the policy. Let's talk about how much you are worth to me." I held my breath, clutching Maya to my chest, praying that the police sirens I heard in my head were actually real. I checked my phone. No signal. The closet walls were too thick. We were alone, trapped in the dark with a madman. And then I heard the sound that stopped my heart completely. The keypad beep of the main closet door. Andre knew the code. Of course he knew the code. I had given it to him for his birthday so he could borrow my watch. The lock clicked. The door handle turned. "Ready or not, here I come," he whispered. The wooden slats of the closet door splintered inward with a deafening crack. I screamed, shielding Maya's body with my own, pressing her face into the silk of my blouse so she would not see the monster standing in the threshold. The darkness of the bedroom was sliced open by the hallway light illuminating Andre's silhouette. He was not holding the kitchen knife anymore. In his right hand, steady and lethal, was a black Glock 9mm pistol. My mind raced, trying to process the shift in reality. We did not own a gun. I hated them. I had refused to let one in the house for 10 years. But as he stepped over the broken wood, kicking aside a pair of my designer heels, I realized how naive I had been. The man who had forged my signature on a $5 million insurance policy would certainly not hesitate to buy an illegal weapon. He had been planning this for months, maybe years. The knife was just for show. This was the endgame. Please, I begged, my voice cracking. Andre, please. Maya is right here. Do not do this in front of our daughter. Andre looked down at us, his face a mask of cold indifference. He raised the gun, aiming it directly at the center of my forehead. The barrel looked like a tunnel into the abyss. It is better this way, Tiana, he said, his voice terrifyingly calm. No loose ends. The intruder panicked. It was a tragedy. A robbery gone wrong. I will be the grieving father. I will take good care of the money. I promise. He pulled the hammer back. The click echoed in the small space like a thunderclap. I squeezed my eyes shut, whispering a final prayer, tightening my grip on my daughter. I waited for the flash. I waited for the end. Crash! The floor-to-ceiling window on the far side of the bedroom exploded inward. Shards of glass sprayed across the room like diamonds. Police, drop the weapon. Drop it now. Red laser dots danced across Andre's chest and face. Men in tactical gear swarmed through the shattered window, their boots crunching on the glass. The room was suddenly filled with blinding light and the roar of shouting voices. I opened my eyes, gasping for air, expecting to see Andre on the ground, handcuffed, defeated. I expected to see the fear of God in his eyes. But I had underestimated him. I had severely underestimated the depth of his evil. In the split second it took for the SWAT team to clear the glass, Andre did the unthinkable. He dropped the gun. He did not just drop it, he tossed it toward me. It slid across the carpet and stopped inches from my knee. Then he threw his hands up in the air and collapsed to his knees, letting out a wail of pure, agonizing despair. Do not shoot. Oh God, please do not shoot. Help me. He was crying. Actual tears were streaming down his face. His body shook with sobbing. She has a gun. She is having an episode. Please do not hurt my wife. She does not know what she is doing. The lead SWAT officer paused, his rifle still trained on Andre, but confusion flickered in his eyes. He looked at Andre kneeling and weeping, then at me huddled in the closet with a gun at my feet. Secure the weapon, the officer shouted. Two officers rushed toward me. One kicked the gun away while the other grabbed my arm, yanking me up from the floor. No, I screamed, trying to pull away to reach for Maya. He was going to kill us. He is the one. He had the gun. Get her out of there, Andre yelled, pointing a shaking finger at me. He turned his face toward the light, and that was when I saw it. Deep, bleeding scratches ran down his left cheek and neck. Fresh blood oozed from the wounds. Look what she did to me. She attacked me while I was sleeping. She thinks I am a demon. Please just get my daughter away from her. I stared at him in horror. I had never touched him. I had never laid a finger on him. He had scratched himself. In those few seconds of darkness before he broke the door down, or maybe right when the window shattered, he had clawed his own face to frame me. That is a lie, I shrieked, struggling against the officer's grip. He is lying. Ask my daughter Maya, tell them. But Maya was curled into a ball in the corner of the closet, traumatized into silence, her hands covering her ears. She was catatonic with fear. Suddenly, a familiar figure burst through the bedroom door. It was Trey, my brother. He was not wearing tactical gear, just his detective badge on his belt and his service weapon drawn. He saw me being restrained by a SWAT officer. He saw Andre on his knees playing the victim. Trey did not ask questions. He knew. He saw the gun on the floor and the look in my eyes. With a roar of rage, he holstered his weapon and launched himself at Andre. You son of a bitch, Trey screamed. He tackled Andre to the ground, driving his fist into Andre's jaw. Andre's head snapped back, blood spraying from his lip. Trey, stop! The SWAT leader shouted. Detective, stand down! Two other officers grabbed Trey, hauling him off Andre. Trey struggled, his eyes wild with fury. He tried to kill her. He hired a hitman. I have the intel, Trey yelled, pointing at Andre, who was now curled up on the carpet, spitting blood and whimpering. Officer, please, Andre gasped, looking up at the SWAT leader with wide, innocent eyes. That is her brother. He is in on it. They have been planning this. They want my money. Look at him. He is attacking a victim. The room fell silent. The accusation hung in the air, heavy and poisonous. The SWAT leader looked at Trey, then at Andre. He saw a detective assaulting an unarmed man who was bleeding and crying. He saw a hysterical woman who had been found near a gun. The narrative was shifting right before my eyes, twisting into something unrecognizable. Detective Brooks, step outside, the SWAT leader commanded, his voice cold. Now, or I will have you arrested for assault. But you do not understand. Trey pleaded, though he stopped struggling. The call we got. The informant. We will sort it out at the station, the leader said. Right now, this looks like a domestic dispute gone sideways and you are too involved. Step outside. Trey looked at me, agony in his eyes. He knew he had just made a mistake. By attacking Andre, he had validated Andre's story. He had made us look like the aggressors. He gave me one last desperate look before walking out of the room, escorted by a SWAT member. I was alone. I am not crazy, I said, my voice trembling as the officer clicked handcuffs onto my wrists. He staged this. Check the gun. His prints are on it. We will check everything, ma'am, the officer said, but his tone was patronizing. Just calm down. My poor wife, Andre sobbed from the floor as a paramedic began attending to his self-inflicted scratches. I tried to get her help. I told her she needed to see her therapist. She stopped taking her medication weeks ago. Medication, I snapped. I do not take medication. I have never taken medication in my life. Andre looked at the officer with a sad, pitying expression. Check her purse, he whispered. The black Hermes on the dresser. I tried to hide them so she would not overdose, but she must have found them. The officer walked over to my dresser. He picked up my purse. I watched, breath held, knowing exactly what was going to happen and powerless to stop it. He unzipped the main compartment and reached inside. He pulled out an orange prescription bottle. He rattled it. Thorazine, the officer read the label. Prescribed to Tiana Brooks. For severe psychosis and hallucinations. He looked at me. The sympathy was gone from his eyes. Now he just saw a dangerous, unstable woman who had snapped. That is not mine, I whispered, tears finally spilling down my cheeks. He planted it. He put it there. Sure he did, the officer said, tightening his grip on my arm. Come on, Mrs. Brooks. Let's go get you evaluated. As they dragged me out of my own bedroom past the shattered glass and the ruined door, I looked back one last time. Andre was sitting up now, holding a gauze pad to his cheek. He looked at me over the paramedic's shoulder. He stopped crying. The fear vanished. And just for a second before they pushed me into the hallway, he winked. A cold, deliberate wink. He had won. He had not just tried to kill me. He had done something far worse. He had stolen my voice. He had turned my reality into a delusion. And as I was marched down the stairs of my dream home, passing neighbors who were gathering on the street to watch the crazy woman being taken away, I realized that the nightmare was not ending. It was just beginning. The white walls of the isolation room seemed to pulse with a fluorescent hum that drilled directly into my skull. It had been 4 hours since the SWAT team dragged me out of my own home. 4 hours of being processed, fingerprinted, and stripped of my clothes, my dignity, and my voice. I was now wearing a scratchy blue paper gown sitting on the edge of a plastic mattress that smelled of industrial bleach and other people's despair. This was the private psychiatric wing of St. Jude's Hospital, a place where wealthy Atlanta families sent their inconvenient relatives to dry out or calm down. But I was not here to rest. I was here because my husband had played the 5150 card. In the state of Georgia, an involuntary psychiatric hold allows a person to be detained for 72 hours if they are deemed a danger to themselves or others. Andre knew exactly what he was doing. 72 hours was not just a timeout, It was a window of opportunity. My mind raced, calculating the damage he could do in 3 days. With me locked up and legally incapacitated, he could access our joint accounts without my authorization. He could liquidate stocks. He could transfer the emergency funds. Worst of all, he could take Maya. The thought of my daughter alone with that monster made me physically sick. I stood up and paced the small room, my bare feet cold against the linoleum. I banged on the heavy metal door again, though I knew it was futile. "Let me out!" I shouted, my voice hoarse. "I am not crazy. You are making a mistake. Check his bank records. Just check the transfers." A sliding panel in the door opened, revealing the eyes of a nurse I had never met. She looked tired and uninterested. "Mrs. Brooks, please sit down," she said in a monotone voice. "Dr. Vance is coming to administer your sedative. If you continue to agitate, we will have to use restraints." "I am not agitated," I said, forcing myself to lower my voice, trying to sound like the CEO I was. "I am the victim of a crime. My husband is trying to kill me for an insurance payout. You have to believe me." The nurse just slid the panel shut. The click echoed like a judgment. They did not hear a terrified woman. They heard the delusions of the psychotic break Andre had invented. He had planted the thorazine. He had staged the scene. He had won. 10 minutes later, the door buzzed and opened. A tall, gray-haired man in a pristine white coat walked in, flanked by 2 large orderlies. Dr. Vance held a clipboard in one hand and a syringe in the other. The liquid inside was clear, but to me it looked like liquid oblivion. "Hello, Tiana," Dr. Vance said, his voice dripping with condescending sweetness. "I spoke with Andre. He is very worried about you. He told us about the hallucinations, about the knife." "He had the knife," I said, backing away until my legs hit the hard frame of the bed. "He tried to stab me." The doctor sighed and tapped the syringe. "Typical persecution complex. Andre said you would say that. He warned us you might try to twist reality. We need to get you stabilized, Tiana. This will help you sleep. It will make the scary thoughts go away. It is not a thought, it is the truth." I yelled, panic finally shattering my composure. "If you inject me with that, you are an accessory to fraud. My lawyer will destroy this hospital." "Restrain her," Dr. Vance ordered calmly. The 2 orderlies lunged forward. I tried to fight, kicking and scratching, but I was a 130-pound woman against 2 men built like linebackers. They slammed me onto the mattress, pinning my arms and legs. The plastic crinkled loudly under the struggle. I watched in horror as Dr. Vance uncapped the needle and stepped closer. "Please," I begged, tears streaming down my face. "Please do not do this. I have a daughter." "Just a little pinch," the doctor said. The needle moved toward my arm. I squeezed my eyes shut, bracing for the chemical darkness that would let Andre steal everything I had built. Suddenly, a commotion erupted in the hallway. "You cannot go in there," a nurse shouted. "Get out of my way, or I will have your license revoked before you can blink," a voice roared. It was a voice I knew better than my own heartbeat. Sharp, authoritative, terrifying to anyone standing on the wrong side of it. "Jessica." The door to my isolation room flew open, banging against the wall with a deafening crash. "Doctor." Vance jumped, nearly dropping the syringe. "Step away from my client," Jessica barked. She stood in the doorway like an avenging angel in a tailored Yves Saint Laurent suit. She held a stack of legal documents in one hand and her phone in the other, recording everything. "Who are you?" Dr. Vance demanded, trying to regain his composure. "This is a restricted area. I am Jessica Brooks, attorney at law, and I have a writ of habeas corpus signed by Judge Miller 5 minutes ago," she announced, striding into the room. She slapped the papers onto the doctor's chest. "You are holding Tiana Brooks illegally. The police report filed by her brother, Detective Trey Brooks, indicates that the firearm found at the scene has been flagged as evidence in an attempted murder investigation where Tiana is the victim, not the perpetrator." "That is not what the admitting paperwork says," the doctor stammered, looking from the papers to the furious woman in front of him. "I do not care what the paperwork says," Jessica hissed, stepping into his personal space. If you stick that needle in her arm, I will sue you personally for medical malpractice, assault, and battery. I will own this hospital and I will own the house you live in. Release her. Now." The doctor looked at the orderlies. They looked at Jessica, then slowly released my arms and backed away. They knew a shark when they saw one. Dr. Vance read the court order, his face paling. He capped the needle and put it in his pocket. "Fine. But this is against medical advice. If she hurts someone, it is on you. Get your things," Tiana, Jessica said to me, her voice softening instantly. "We are leaving." I scrambled off the bed, my legs shaking so hard I could barely stand. Jessica wrapped her arm around me, supporting my weight. She walked me out of that room, past the staring nurses, past the security guards who stepped aside as if we were royalty. We did not stop until we were in the back of her black SUV, the heavy doors locking out the world. "Trey is meeting us at the safe house," Jessica said, handing me a bottle of water. She looked at me, her blue eyes filled with fierce loyalty. "I am sorry it took me so long." Judge Miller was on the golf course. I had to drive a golf cart onto the green to get him to sign the order. I laughed, a choked, hysterical sound. "Thank you," I whispered. "You saved my life." "Do not thank me yet," she said grimly. "We have a bigger problem." She reached into her purse and pulled out my phone, which the police had surrendered to her, along with my personal effects. "You need to see this," she said. "Do not scream." I took the phone. The screen was lit up with notifications. Hundreds of them. Text messages, missed calls, Instagram tags. But the one that dominated the screen was a Facebook Live notification. "Andre Brooks is live, my truth." My stomach dropped to the floor. I tapped the notification. The video filled the screen. Andre was sitting in our living room, the beautiful living room I had decorated. He was wearing a bandage on his cheek where he had scratched himself. His eyes were red and puffy. He looked broken. He looked like the victim. "Hey everyone," Andre said to the camera, his voice trembling. "I did not want to do this. I really didn't. But the rumors are getting out of control and I need to protect my family." He wiped a fake tear. "Tiana, my beautiful wife. She has been struggling. Postpartum depression is real, guys. We tried to keep it private. We tried to get her help. But tonight she snapped. She tried to hurt me. She tried to hurt our daughter." I gasped, covering my mouth. He was not just lying to the police, he was lying to the world. The comments on the side of the video were scrolling by so fast I could barely read them. "Stay strong, Andre. Praying for you, brother." I always knew she was stuck up. Crazy woman. Hope she never sees that kid again. "He is destroying me," I whispered, watching as the viewer count ticked up to 5,000 people. My clients, my employees, my friends, they are all watching this. Andre continued looking directly into the lens. "The police took her away for help, but her family, they are powerful. They have lawyers. They might try to get her out. I am scared, guys. I am scared she is going to come back and finish what she started. I just want my wife back. The Tiana I married. Not this monster." He buried his face in his hands, sobbing theatrically. "He is good," Jessica said quietly, staring at the road ahead. "He is playing the court of public opinion because he knows he might lose in the court of law. He wants to make sure that even if you are innocent, your reputation is so ruined that you have nothing left to come back to." I stared at the screen, watching the man I had shared a bed with for 7 years assassinate my character in real time. He was isolating me. He was turning my community against me. He was making sure that if I disappeared, people would think it was for the best. But as I watched him fake another sob, something inside me snapped. The fear that had paralyzed me in the hospital room evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard rage. He thought he could shame me into silence. He thought he could use my own life against me. He forgot who I was. I was not just a wife. I was a builder. I was a fighter. And I knew where the bodies were buried because I had paid for the shovel. "Turn the car around," I said to Jessica, what she asked, looking at me in the rearview mirror. "We are going to the safe house." "No," I said, gripping the phone until my knuckles turned white. "Take me to the office. I need my laptop. I need my server keys." "Tiana." "That is dangerous," Jessica warned. "He wants a war," I said, looking at Andre's lying face on the screen one last time before closing the app. "He wants to talk about finances and secrets." "Fine. Let's show the world what Andre Brooks is really made of." Jessica looked at me for a long moment, then a slow, sharp smile spread across her face. "Buckle up," she said, spinning the steering wheel. "We are going to the office." The hospital was a prison of walls, but the world Andre had created online was a prison of lies. I had escaped the first one. Now I was going to burn the second one to the ground. The house stood silent against the night sky, a sprawling silhouette of brick and glass that used to represent my American dream. Now, as Trey pulled his unmarked sedan into the driveway, killing the headlights, it looked like a mausoleum. We had 24 hours. That was the loophole Jessica had found. Andre was being held on the illegal firearm charge, but his lawyer was already working on bail. By tomorrow morning he would be back, and if we did not find the evidence to bury him, I would be the one looking over my shoulder for the rest of my life. I unlocked the front door, my hand steady. The fear that had consumed me in the hospital was gone, replaced by a cold, surgical determination. I did not turn on the main lights. We moved through the shadows, guided only by the tactical flashlights Trey had brought. The air inside felt stale, heavy, with the lingering scent of the Thanksgiving dinner that never happened. "Where do we start?" I whispered, the silence of the house feeling oppressive. Trey pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket. It was the transcript from the interrogation with the hitman's broker. He tapped a highlighted line. The guy said Andre bragged about his stash. He called it the crypt. Said he keeps the keys to his new life in the crypt. The crypt? I frowned. We did not have a basement other than the small utility room, and we had already checked that. We did not have a wine cellar. Andre was not clever enough for metaphors. If he called it a crypt, it was somewhere dark, somewhere enclosed, and somewhere he thought was sacred. "His office," I said, realizing it instantly. "He calls his office the man cave, but it has no windows. He spends hours in there with the door locked, claiming he is working on his startups. It is dark. It is private. It is his sanctuary." We moved to the end of the hallway. The double oak doors to Andre's office were locked, but Trey kicked the mechanism open with a single practice strike. We stepped inside. The room smelled of expensive leather, stale cigar smoke, and secrets. It was furnished with dark mahogany and heavy drapes, a shrine to the successful businessman Andre pretended to be. "Tear it apart," Trey said. We went to work. We pulled books off the shelves, checking for hollowed-out centers. We emptied the filing cabinets, dumping years of fake invoices and failed business plans onto the Persian rug. We checked behind the framed degrees that I had paid for. Nothing. Just dust and the debris of a mediocre life. 20 minutes passed. Frustration began to gnaw at me. If we did not find this evidence, Andre would walk. He would claim the gun was for self-defense against his crazy wife. He would spin the narrative, and he would win. I stood in the center of the room, shining my light around the wreckage. "Think, Tiana. Think like him. He is arrogant. He is lazy. He wants his secrets close enough to touch but hidden enough to feel superior." My beam landed on the corner of the room near the heavy velvet curtains. There was a yoga mat rolled up and leaning against the wall. A purple Lululemon mat. I stared at it. Andre did not do yoga. He mocked me whenever I practiced. He called it a waste of time. Why did he have a yoga mat in his office? I walked over and kicked the mat. It fell over with a heavy thud, heavier than a foam mat should sound. Behind it, on the hardwood floor, the pattern of the wood grain looked slightly misaligned. Trey, Bring the crowbar, I said, my voice trembling with anticipation. I knelt down. The floorboards here were wide heart pine stained a deep espresso. I ran my fingers along the seam of the board where the mat had been standing. There was a tiny groove almost invisible to the naked eye, but I could feel the scratch in the varnish. Someone had pried this board up before. Recently. Trey wedged the crowbar into the seam. With a grunt of effort, he leaned his weight into it. The wood groaned, protested, and then popped up with a screech of nails giving way. Underneath the floorboard, nestled between the joists and insulation, was a gray metal box. It was cemented into the foundation. A floor safe. The crypt. I knew the code. Of course I knew the code. It was the one date Andre never forgot. Not our anniversary. Not Maya's birthday. It was the day he closed his first seed funding round for his first company. The day he thought he had finally become the big shot he pretended to be. 041215. The keypad beeped. The green light flashed. The lock clicked open. Trey lifted the heavy lid. We both stared down into the box, our flashlights illuminating the betrayal that had been living under my feet. It was not just money, although there was plenty of that. Stacks of $100 bills wrapped in rubber bands likely skimmed from my business accounts over the last 5 years. But the money was just the fuel. The real weapon was the identity. I reached in and pulled out a stack of passports. The photos were all of Andre, but the names were different. Marcus King, David Solis, Julian Thorne. They were high-quality forgeries. Visas for Brazil, Thailand, and Belize were already stamped inside. He was not just planning to kill me, he was planning to erase himself. Dig deeper, Trey said, his voice hard. I reached back into the cold metal box. My hand brushed against something plastic. I pulled out a clear Ziploc bag containing 5 cell phones. Burner phones, cheap disposable androids that could be bought at any gas station. Why does he need 5 phones? I whispered. Trey took the bag from me. He took one of the phones out and powered it on. The screen cracked to life, glowing with a generic background. No password. Check the messages, Trey said. I opened the text app. Empty. I checked the call log. Empty. He was careful. I picked up the second phone. Empty. The third phone. Empty. My hands were shaking. Maybe there was nothing here. Maybe these were just backups. I picked up the fourth phone. It had a piece of red tape on the back. As soon as I powered it on, it buzzed. A notification popped up on the lock screen. Message from my heart. My stomach churned. My heart. That is what he used to call me in the beginning. Before I became the bank account. Before I became the obstacle. I unlocked the phone. There was only one conversation thread stretching back 6 months. I scrolled to the bottom to the message that had just arrived 3 minutes ago. The sender. My heart had sent a text. Did you finish the wife yet? Me and the kid are waiting at the airport. Flight leaves in 2 hours. Do not make us late. The room spun. I dropped the phone onto the pile of fake passports. It clattered against the hardwood, the screen still glowing with those words. Me and the kid. I looked at Trey. His face was a mask of shock. He had seen a lot of evil in his line of work, but this was different. This was family. He has a child. I whispered, the realization crashing over me like a tidal wave. He has another child. It was not just Sasha, the mistress we suspected. It was a whole other life. While I was building our empire, while I was raising Maya, while I was paying for his cars and his suits and his ego, he was building a backup family. He was going to kill me, take the $5 million and fly to Brazil to play daddy to another woman's child. Who is she? Trey asked, picking up the phone to trace the number. I do not know, I said, feeling a cold, dark rage rising in my chest, replacing the shock. But I know one thing. What is that? Trey asked. I looked at the passport for Marcus King. I looked at the stacks of my stolen money. And I looked at the phone that held the proof of his ultimate betrayal. He is not going to the airport, I said, standing up and wiping the dust from my knees. And neither are they. We have the phone. We have the location. Trey looked at me. The sister who used to be afraid of thunderstorms was gone. In her place stood a woman who had just realized that her entire marriage was a long con. Track the number, Trey. I ordered, my voice steady and lethal. Find out where they are waiting. If Andre wants to see his new family so bad, let's make sure the reunion happens in a cell block. Trey nodded, pulling out his police radio. Dispatch. I need a ping on a mobile number immediately. Priority 1. Possible accomplice to attempted murder. As Trey called it in, I looked down at the open safe one last time. The crypt. He was right to call it that. Because tonight Andre Brooks did not just bury his secrets in here. He buried his freedom. The rain had started to fall by the time Jessica parked her black SUV in the cracked asphalt lot of the Pines apartment complex. It was a stark contrast to the gated community in Buckhead where I had spent the last 7 years playing house. Here the streetlights flickered with an ominous buzz, and the air smelled of wet pavement and exhaust. This was where my husband, the man who wore $3,000 suits, kept his other life. We sat in the car for a moment, the windshield wipers slicing back and forth like a metronome counting down the seconds of my patience. Jessica looked at me, her hand resting on the door handle. "Are you sure you want to do this, Tiana?" she asked, her voice low. "We can call Trey. We can send a squad car. You do not have to look her in the eye." I looked up at the third-floor window where a warm yellow light glowed behind cheap blinds. "I need to see her," I said, my voice colder than the rain outside. "I need to see what he thought was worth killing me for. And more importantly, I need her to know that her ticket to Brazil just got cancelled." I stepped out of the car, pulling my trench coat tight against the chill. I was not here to scream. I was not here to pull hair or make a scene like the women in the soap operas Andre used to mock. I was here on a business trip. And the business was survival. We climbed the concrete stairs, the sound of our heels echoing in the open breezeway. Apartment 304. The door was painted a peeling beige, a sad little wreath hanging from a command hook. It looked so normal, so domestic. It made my stomach churn. I knocked. 3 sharp, authoritative raps. Inside I heard footsteps. Light, quick steps. Then the rattle of a chain lock sliding back. The door opened a crack. A face appeared. She was young. Painfully young. Maybe 25. She had soft, curly hair pulled back in a messy bun and was wearing an oversized t-shirt that I recognized. It was Andre's old college football shirt. The one I thought he had lost years ago. "Can I help you?" she asked, her eyes darting from me to Jessica. She did not recognize me. Why would she? To her, I was just a ghost. A hurdle. The stubborn ex-wife who would not sign the papers. "Hello, Sasha," I said, pushing the door open with my palm before she could close it. "We need to talk about Marcus King." Her face went pale. She stumbled back, gripping the doorframe. "Who are you? How do you know that name?" I stepped into the apartment, Jessica following close behind like my shadow. The living room was small but tidy. Toys were scattered across the carpet. A plastic high chair sat in the corner. The smell of baby powder and vanilla candles hit me, a scent so innocent it made the betrayal taste like bile in my throat. "I am the woman Andre told you was crazy," I said, closing the door behind us and locking it. "I am the woman he told you refused to sign the divorce papers. I am Tiana Brooks, his wife." Sasha's eyes widened in horror. She backed away until she hit the edge of a worn-out sofa. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "No, that is a lie. He said you were separated for 3 years. He said you were unstable. He said you were just trying to get more alimony." "He says a lot of things," Jessica interjected, her lawyer voice cutting through the air. "Like how his name is Marcus King, or how he is taking you to Brazil tomorrow." Sasha looked at the burner phone in my hand. The same phone we had taken from the safe. The realization hit her slowly, painful inch by inch. "Where is Andre?" she asked, her voice trembling. "He is supposed to be here. He went to get the cash." "He is not coming, Sasha," I said, walking further into the room. I looked around at the photos on the mantel. Andre holding a baby. Andre smiling at Sasha on a Ferris wheel. Andre looking happier in this cramped apartment than he ever looked in our mansion. "He tried to kill me tonight," I stated flatly. Sasha let out a choked laugh, a sound of pure denial. "You are lying. Andre is gentle. He would never hurt anyone. He loves us. He is doing everything for us." I held up the phone. I opened the text message thread, the one labeled "My Heart." "Reddit," I commanded, shoving the screen toward her face. She recoiled, but her eyes locked onto the glowing text. "Did you finish the wife yet? Me and the kid are waiting at the airport." I watched the color drain from her face. She read it again, and again. Her hands flew to her mouth. He did not mean kill," she stammered, tears welling up in her large brown eyes. "He meant finish the deal. With the lawyers." "Stop it," I snapped. "Stop lying to yourself. You are not stupid, Sasha. You know where the money comes from. You know why he has 5 phones. You know why you are fleeing the country in the middle of the night. Do you really think a man who hires a hitman to murder the mother of his first child is going to be a father of the year to his second?" Sasha sank onto the sofa, burying her face in her hands. A wail rose from the back bedroom. The baby had woken up. The sound pierced through me. I wanted to hate her. I wanted to hate the child. But looking at her shivering in that oversized shirt, I saw myself 7 years ago. Blinded by charm. Desperate for love. Believing every lie because the truth was too painful to bear. "Andre does not love you, Sasha," I said, my voice softening just a fraction. "He does not love me either. He loves the $5 million he was going to get from my life insurance. And once he has that money and once he is safe in Brazil, do you really think he is going to keep around the only witness who can link him to the crime?" Sasha looked up at me, mascara running down her cheeks. "What are you saying?" "I am saying you are a loose end," I told her brutally. "You know about the fake passports. You know about the flight. When the police start looking for him, who do you think he is going to blame? Or worse, when he gets tired of playing house in Rio? What happens to you and your baby then?" She shook her head, sobbing openly now. "He promised. He said we would be a real family. He promised me forever too," I said. "And tonight, he tried to deliver it with a bullet." Jessica stepped forward, handing Sasha a tissue. "The police are looking for him, Sasha. But they are also looking for his accomplice, the person who helped him book the flights, the person who knew about the money." "I did not know about the hits," Sasha cried, panic seizing her. "I swear I just thought we were running away from his debt. He said the loan sharks were after him." "Then prove it," I said. I sat down on the coffee table facing her. I leaned in close. "If you want to save yourself, and if you want to save your baby from growing up in foster care while you rot in prison, you need to give us something. You need to give us the leverage." Sasha looked toward the bedroom where the baby was still crying. She looked back at me. The illusion of her romance had shattered, leaving only the terrified instinct of a mother. "He made me keep a book," she whispered. "A book?" Jessica asked sharply. Sasha nodded, wiping her nose. "He said it was for his startup. He said he could not keep it at his office because of the audit. He made me write down numbers, dates, amounts. He brought bags of cash here every Friday and I had to count it and deposit it into different accounts online. Crypto wallets. Offshore shells." My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it. The money laundering. The paper trail that would prove the motive. "Where is it?" I asked. Sasha stood up on shaky legs. She walked to the kitchen and opened the pantry. She reached into a box of cereal generic cornflakes and pulled out a small black moleskin notebook. She held it out to me like it was a grenade. I took it. The leather was worn. I opened the first page. It was filled with Andre's handwriting annotated with Sasha's neat script. October 12th, 50,000, transfer to Ghost. November 1st, 200,000, Cayman Holdings. It was all there, every stolen dollar, every bribe, and the payment for the hitman. You need to come with us, Jessica said, taking the notebook from my hand and securing it in her briefcase. Now, before he finds out you are still here. Sasha looked around the apartment, her eyes lingering on the life she thought she was building. He is going to kill me, she whispered. Not if we bury him first, I said, standing up and buttoning my coat. Grab the baby, Sasha. We are going to the police station. As she ran to the bedroom to get the child, I looked around the cheap apartment one last time. Andre had built a castle of lies on a foundation of sand. He thought he could keep his two worlds separate. He thought he could pit two women against each other. But he forgot the most important rule of survival. Never underestimate a woman who has nothing left to lose. I walked to the door and opened it to the rainy night. The wind felt different now. It did not feel like a storm, it felt like a cleansing. We had the evidence, we had the witness. It was time to go hunting. The morning sun hit the pavement outside the Fulton County Jail with a brightness that felt offensive. It had been 24 hours since I watched the police drag my husband away in handcuffs, 24 hours since I stood in a cheap apartment and convinced his mistress to betray him. But as the heavy steel doors buzzed open and Andre stepped out onto the sidewalk, he did not look like a man who had been humbled. He looked like a man who was inconvenienced. He adjusted the collar of his wrinkled cashmere sweater, blinking against the light. Waiting for him at the curb, leaning against her rusted sedan, was his mother, Vernice. She looked tired, her face etched with the stress of a sleepless night. But the moment she saw him, her eyes lit up with that blind, suffocating devotion that had created the monster walking toward her. She rushed forward, wrapping him in a hug that he barely returned. "My poor baby," she wailed loud enough for the passers-by to hear. "Look what that woman did to you. Locked up like a criminal. It is a sin, Andre. It is a sin." Andre patted her back stiffly, his eyes scanning the parking lot, probably looking for paparazzi, or perhaps hoping I would be there to beg for his forgiveness. "Did you get the bail posted?" he asked, his voice raspy. Vernice pulled back, wiping her eyes. "I had to put the house up, baby. The bondsman said the gun charge was serious because of the circumstances. But I told him my son is a good man. I signed the deed over as collateral." Andre nodded, not even offering a thank you. "Good. Let's go. I need a shower, and then I need to deal with my wife." As they drove away, Andre sat in the passenger seat checking his phone. He had been offline for a day, and the silence was eating him alive. He expected to see his accounts frozen, his reputation in tatters. But instead, he saw something that made him smile. The narrative online was messy. His live stream had worked. There were thousands of comments supporting him, calling me a vindictive shrew, questioning my mental health. He scrolled through them, feeding his ego, rebuilding his confidence brick by brick. "She thinks she can win," he muttered, staring out the window as the city skyline gave way to the lush greenery of Buckhead. "She thinks because she has money, she has power. But she forgot that I know where the skeletons are buried." When they pulled into the driveway of our estate, Andre's confidence was at an all-time high. He marched up the front steps, Vernice trailing behind him, like a loyal guard dog. He expected a confrontation. He expected me to be there crying, maybe with Jessica, trying to serve him a restraining order. He was ready for it. He had his lines rehearsed. He was going to gaslight me, until I questioned my own name. He unlocked the front door and shoved it open. "Honey, I am home!" he shouted, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Silence. Not the quiet of a sleeping house, but the hollow echoing silence of a tomb. Andre walked into the foyer. The house was cold. The thermostat had been turned off. He walked into the living room. It was empty. Not just devoid of people, but stripped of life. The photos on the mantel were gone. My laptop was gone. The vase of fresh flowers I kept on the coffee table was gone. Even the throw pillows were missing. "Where is she?" Vernice asked, looking around nervously. "Run away," Andre scoffed, walking into the kitchen, probably hiding at her brother's house. "She knows she messed up. She knows the police are going to realize she planted that gun." He opened the refrigerator. It was empty. Completely empty. Even the condiments were gone. He slammed the door shut, a flicker of unease finally piercing his arrogance. He went to his office, the man cave. He tried the door. Unlocked. He walked in. The room was tossed. Books were on the floor. The filing cabinets were open. And in the corner, the floorboard he had carefully pried up was exposed, the empty safe staring back at him like a toothless mouth. He froze. The blood drained from his face. "She found it," he whispered. Vernice came up behind him. "Found what, baby? My savings," he lied, his mind racing. Just then the doorbell rang. It was a sharp, insistent sound that made them both jump. Andre wiped the sweat from his forehead and marched to the front door. If it was the police, he would lawyer up. If it was me, he would strangle me. He opened the door. Standing there was a short, balding man holding a manila envelope. "Andre Brooks. Yes, you have been served." The man shoved the envelope into Andre's chest and walked away. Andre ripped it open right there on the porch. It was a petition for divorce, irreconcilable differences, adultery, attempted murder. The list of grievances was long, detailed, and brutal. Andre scanned the document, his eyes narrowing. Then he started to laugh. A low, rumbling chuckle that grew into a full-blown cackle. "What is it?" Vernice asked, peering over his shoulder. "She wants a divorce," Andre said, shaking his head. "She thinks she can just divorce me and cut me off." He looked at his mother, a grin spreading across his face. "She forgot what state we live in, Mama. Georgia is an equitable distribution state. That means marital assets are divided fairly. And since I have no income and she has 3 businesses, fair is going to look a lot like 50%. He waved the papers in the air. "Let her file. Let her drag my name through the mud. I will walk away with half her empire. I will take half the spas, half the retirement accounts, half of this house. By the time I am done with her, Tiana is going to be working the front desk at her own clinic." He pulled out his phone to call his lawyer, feeling like he had just won the lottery. He did not know that the game he was playing had ended hours ago. He did not know that while he was doing the math on my net worth, I was sitting in a room that made his divorce court fantasies look like child's play. 5 miles away in the heart of downtown Atlanta, the conference room of Jessica's law firm was silent, save for the hum of the air conditioning and the scratching of pens on paper. The room was glass-walled, offering a panoramic view of the city, but no one was looking at the view. I sat at the head of the long mahogany table. I was not wearing the terrified expression of a victim. I was wearing a navy blue power suit, my hair pulled back in a tight bun, my hands clasped on top of the black moleskin notebook we had taken from Sasha's apartment. To my right sat Jessica. To my left sat Trey. And across from us sat 3 people Andre never expected to meet. Special Agent Miller from the FBI, Detective Gomez from the Financial Crimes Unit, and a forensic accountant named Sarah, who looked like she ate tax fraud for breakfast. Agent Miller flipped through the notebook, his face unreadable. He compared the entries in Sasha's ledger with the bank statements Jessica had subpoenaed. "You understand the implications of this?" Mrs. Brooks, Agent Miller asked, looking up at me. "This is not just domestic. This is federal." "I understand," I said, my voice steady. "This ledger details a systematic laundering operation," Miller continued. "He was moving money through shell companies in the Caymans, then funneling it back into crypto wallets. We have traced wire transfers that correspond to the dates in this book, and the payment to the hitman, $50,000 wired to a known associate of the cartel." He closed the book and leaned back. We have enough to arrest him now. Violation of the RICO Act, wire fraud, money laundering, conspiracy to commit capital murder. So why aren't you arresting him, I asked. Because we want the whole network, Detective Gomez interjected. Andre is a middleman. He is arrogant, but he is not smart enough to set up those offshore shells by himself. He has a partner, a facilitator. We see recurring payments to an entity called Omega Consulting. Do you know what that is? I shook my head. I never heard of it. We believe Omega is the key, Gomez said. If we arrest Andre today, Omega goes underground. We need Andre to think he is safe. We need him to think he is fighting a simple divorce case. When he gets desperate for cash, and he will now that you have cut him off, he will reach out to Omega to liquidate his assets. And when he does, Miller finished, we will be listening. Jessica placed a hand on my arm. They want us to play along, Tiana. They want you to proceed with the divorce. Let him think it is just a battle for money. Let him think he has a chance to win half the assets. I looked at the agents. They were asking me to be bait. They were asking me to let the man who tried to kill me walk free, live in my house, and taunt me all so they could catch a bigger fish. If I do this, I said, looking Miller in the eye, if I let him think he is winning, if I let him drag my name through the mud, you have to promise me one thing. Anything, Miller said. I want to be there when the hammer drops, I said. I do not want to hear about it on the news. I want to see his face when he realizes that while he was fighting for 50% of my money, he was losing 100% of his freedom. Miller nodded slowly. We can make that happen. Then we have a deal, I said. I stood up and walked to the window looking out at the city. Somewhere out there, Andre was probably popping a bottle of champagne celebrating his release. He was probably telling his mother that he was going to bleed me dry. He thought he was the hunter. He thought I was the wounded gazelle. He had no idea that he was already in the cage. The door just hadn't locked yet. Jessica's phone buzzed on the table. She picked it up and glanced at the screen. A grim smile touched her lips. Speaking of the devil, she said, Andre's lawyer just emailed. They are rejecting our offer to settle. They are demanding a forensic audit of your businesses and an emergency hearing for spousal support. He claims he is destitute because you stole his savings. I turned back to the room, a cold smile mirroring hers. He wants an audit, I asked. Jessica nodded. Give it to him, I said. But let's give him the kind of audit he is not expecting. I looked at the FBI agents. It is time to go to work, gentlemen. Let's make my husband feel like the smartest man in the room right up until the moment the walls close in. The counterstrike had begun. And unlike Andre, I was not playing for money. I was playing for keeps. The conference room smelled of lemon polish and aggressive cologne. We were seated at a long glass table on the 42nd floor of a downtown skyscraper, the city of Atlanta, sprawling out beneath us like a game board. On one side sat Andre and his lawyer, a man named Mr. Sterling, who wore a suit that cost more than my first car and a smile that did not reach his eyes. On the other side sat Jessica and me. Andre looked good, too good. He had shaved, worn his best navy suit, and was leaning back in his leather chair with the relaxed confidence of a man who thought he had already won. He did not look like a man facing federal prison. He looked like a man expecting a payday. Mr. Sterling cleared his throat and slid a thick document across the table. Let us not waste time, he said smoothly. My client is willing to be generous. He wants to resolve this amicably. We are asking for 50% of the marital assets. That includes the primary residence in Buckhead, the vacation home in Savannah, and a 50% equity stake in the Brooks Medical Spa chain. Additionally, given that Mr. Brooks paused his own career to support his wife's business, we are requesting spousal support of $10,000 a month for the next 5 years. I felt a muscle in my jaw jump. Paused his career. Andre had never paused anything except his PlayStation. He had used my money to fund a dozen failed startups and a secret double life. But I kept my face impassive. I was not here to argue emotions. I was here to close the trap. Jessica picked up the document, glanced at it, and tossed it back onto the table as if it were a fast food menu. That is an interesting proposal, she said, her voice dangerously calm. But you seem to be operating under a misunderstanding of the term equitable distribution. Mr. Sterling smirked. Georgia law is clear, counselor. Assets acquired during the marriage are subject to division. Tiana built that business while married to Andre. He is entitled to half. Andre leaned forward, locking eyes with me. Come on, Tiana, he said, his voice dropping to that faux sincere tone he used to manipulate me with. I helped you build that brand. I was there late nights. I gave you advice. Fair is fair. I just want what is mine so I can move on. I looked at him, really looked at him. I saw the greed in his eyes. He did not want to move on. He wanted to cash out. He wanted to take my money and run to Brazil with his other family. He needed this settlement to fund his escape. You are right, Andre, I said softly. Fair is fair. Jessica reached into her briefcase. She did not pull out a settlement offer. She pulled out a black binder, thick and heavy. She placed it on the table with a thud that echoed in the silent room. We agree that marital assets should be split. 50-50, Jessica said. But under Georgia law, marital liabilities are also subject to equitable distribution. That means you split the wealth, but you also split the debt. Andre frowned. We do not have any debt. The house is almost paid off. The cars are leased. Tiana runs a clean ship. Tiana does, Jessica corrected. But you do not. She opened the binder. Inside were hundreds of pages of financial records. Betting slips, promissory notes, high-interest loans from shadow lenders in Macau and Las Vegas. Mr. Brooks. Jessica continued, her finger tracing a column of numbers. Over the last 4 years, you have accumulated significant gambling debts, online poker, sports betting, and some very unfortunate investments in non-existent cryptocurrencies. By our calculation, the total principal comes to exactly $3.2 million. Andre turned pale. That is private debt, he stammered. That has nothing to do with the marriage. Actually, Mr. Sterling interrupted, looking at his client with sudden concern. If these debts were incurred during the marriage, they are considered community obligations unless proven otherwise. But that is not the best part, I cut in, leaning forward. You see, Andre, you stopped paying those debts 6 months ago. You thought you could just ghost those lenders. But lenders like that do not just go away. They sell the debt. They sell it to collection agencies for pennies on the dollar just to get it off their books. I signaled to Jessica. She turned the page to reveal a certificate of incorporation. 3 days ago, a company called Phoenix Financial Holdings purchased your entire debt portfolio, Jessica announced. They bought every IOU, every marker, every gambling slip. They are now the sole creditor for your $3.2 million debt. So what? Andre snapped, sweat beginning to bead on his forehead. So I owe some collection agency. I will declare bankruptcy. I will still take half her assets. You cannot declare bankruptcy on this, I said, a cold smile touching my lips. Because Phoenix Financial Holdings is a shell company. I paused, letting the silence stretch until it was almost unbearable. And I own it, I whispered. The color drained from Andre's face completely. He looked from me to the binder, his mouth opening and closing like a fish on dry land. I bought your debt, Andre. I explained, my voice steady and hard. I own your mistakes. I own your bad decisions. And now I own you. Jessica leaned in for the kill. So here is the offer, Mr. Sterling. If your client wants 50% of the assets, he must assume responsibility for 50% of the total marital liability. The assets he is asking for are valued at roughly $2 million. His share of the debt is $1.6 million. She did the math in the air with her hand. That means if he takes the deal he just proposed, he walks away with $400,000. But since I am assuming he does not have the liquid cash to pay the immediate interest penalties on that debt, which I also now control, we will be garnishing that amount immediately. Meaning I finished, you walk away with nothing. Zero. Actually less than zero, because you will still owe me the interest. Andre slammed his hand on the table. You cannot do this. This is a setup. It is business, Andre, I said coolly. You wanted to play the big shot businessman. Welcome to the boardroom. This is how the real game is played. Mr. Sterling looked at the documents, his face pale. He knew they were cornered. He whispered something frantically in Andre's ear, probably telling him to fold, probably telling him to walk away before I decided to foreclose on his life. But Andre was not listening. He was staring at me with pure, unadulterated hatred. He was seeing his escape plan evaporate. No settlement money meant no Brazil. No Brazil meant he had to stay here and face the music. And he knew deep down that the music was about to get very loud. Fine, Andre hissed, standing up so abruptly his chair tipped over. Keep the house. Keep the spas. I do not want your charity. He adjusted his suit jacket, trying to regain some shred of dignity. But I am not signing anything that says I owe you money. I am leaving, and you will be hearing from me. He stormed toward the door. Mr. Sterling scrambled to gather his papers, looking apologetic and terrified at the same time. As Andre reached for the door handle, I spoke one last time. Andre. He stopped but didn't turn around. Phoenix Financial demands payment in full within 30 days, I said to his back. Or we will begin seizing personal assets. Watch your step. He slammed the door behind him. The room fell silent. Jessica let out a long breath and closed the binder. He took the bait, she said. I nodded, feeling a strange mixture of triumph and exhaustion. We had stripped him of his legal options. We had stripped him of his financial parachute. He was broke, he was desperate, and he had a flight to catch that he could no longer pay for. There is only one place left for him to go, I said, looking out the window at the city. He has to go to the source, Jessica agreed. He has to call Omega. Exactly, I said. We just cut off his supply lines. Now he has to dig up his buried treasure. And the FBI is waiting with a shovel. I stood up and smoothed my skirt. The meeting was over. The divorce was effectively stalled. But the real war had just entered its final phase. Andre thought he was walking away from a bad negotiation. He did not realize he was walking straight into a federal indictment. Let him run, I said. He is just running out of road. The afternoon sun beat down on the pavement of Buckhead Academy, casting long shadows across the line of luxury SUVs waiting for dismissal. This was usually the most peaceful part of my day, a 20-minute window where I could just be a mother waiting for her child, not a CEO fighting a hostile takeover or a wife dismantling a criminal marriage. But as I pulled my car into the designated pickup lane, I saw the commotion near the front gate. The teachers, usually poised and smiling, were gathered in a tight defensive circle. Security guards were running from the main building. And in the center of the chaos, screaming like a banshee, was a woman I knew better than I wanted to. Vernice Brooks, my mother-in-law. She was not the polished church-going matriarch she pretended to be on Sundays. Her hair was wild, her eyes manic, and she was gripping the iron fence of the school gate with one hand while waving a piece of paper with the other. "Give me my granddaughter," she shrieked, her voice cracking with hysteria. "I have rights. Her mother is a drug addict. She is unstable. You are letting a monster raise that child." My heart hammered against my ribs, not out of fear, but out of a cold, sharp fury. Andre had lost the battle for the assets, so now he had unleashed his attack dog. He knew he could not come near Maya because of his bail conditions, so he sent his mother to do the dirty work. He wanted to humiliate me. He wanted to create a scene so public and so ugly that Child Protective Services would have no choice but to intervene. I put the car in park and stepped out. The murmur of the other parents stopped instantly. All eyes turned to me. I could feel their judgment, heavy and suffocating. To them, I was the subject of the latest gossip, the woman whose husband had gone live on Facebook to call her crazy. "Tiana, please go back to your car," the headmaster called out, trying to maintain order. "We have called the police." Vernice saw me. Her face twisted into a mask of pure venom. "There she is," she yelled, pointing a shaking finger at me. "There is the woman who framed my son. Look at her. She is high right now. Look at her eyes. She is a danger to that little girl. She lunged toward the gate, trying to push past the security guard. I am taking Maya. I am taking her to a safe house. You cannot stop me. I did not scream. I did not run. I walked toward her with the steady rhythmic click of my heels on the pavement echoing like a metronome. I stopped 5 feet away from her. The crowd of parents holding their phones up to record the drama held their breath. You are done, Vernice, I said. My voice was low, but in the sudden silence of the courtyard, it carried like a gunshot. You are the one who is done, she spat back. I told the school board everything. I told them about the pills. I told them about the abuse. Andre told me everything. I looked at her, really looked at her. I saw the desperation in her eyes. She was not fighting for Maya. She was fighting for her lifestyle. She knew that if I cut Andre off, the money stopped. The mortgage payments on her house stopped. The leased Cadillac stopped. She was fighting for her survival, and she was using my 6-year-old daughter as a human shield. You want to talk about what Andre told you? I asked, pulling my phone from my pocket. I tapped the screen, connecting it to the Bluetooth speaker system I had grabbed from the back seat. I held the speaker up, turning the volume to the maximum. Let us hear what Andre really tells you when he thinks no one is listening. Vernice froze. What is that? I pressed play. The audio was crystal clear. It was a recording from the wiretap the FBI had authorized 3 weeks ago, captured during a phone call between Andre and his mother. Andre's voice boomed across the school courtyard, magnified and undeniable. She is fighting the divorce, Mama. She is trying to lock down the accounts. Then, Vernice's voice answered, shrill and impatient. Well, you need to hurry up and fix it, Andre. The bank is calling about my house again. You promised me that insurance money. I know, Mama, Andre replied. I hired the guy. It is happening tonight. Once Tiana is gone, the 5 million hits the account. I will wire you 1 million immediately so you can pay off the house and the bingo debt. Just make sure you play the grieving grandmother part. I paused the recording. The silence that followed was absolute. It was heavy and suffocating. The parents who had been filming were now lowering their phones, staring at Vernice with open horror. The teachers looked sick. The headmaster stood with his mouth open. Vernice looked like she had been slapped. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. The color drained from her face, leaving her looking gray and old. That is fake, she whispered, her voice trembling. That is AI. You made that up. I took a step closer to her. The FBI authenticated that call this morning, Vernice. It is part of the federal indictment against your son for conspiracy to commit capital murder. And do you know what else it proves? It proves you are an accomplice. I motioned to the security guards. Get her off this property, I ordered. Vernice looked around, seeking an ally, seeking anyone who would believe her lie. But the wall of judgment had turned. The other mothers, the ones who protected their children like lionesses, were now looking at her with disgust. She was not a concerned grandmother. She was a woman who had agreed to trade her daughter-in-law's life for $1 million. You monster, one of the mothers whispered loud enough to be heard. Vernice began to back away, shaking her head. No, I just wanted to help my son. Mr. Henderson, the head of security, stepped forward. He was a large man, a former Marine, and he had heard enough. He grabbed Vernice by the arm, not gently. You need to leave, Mrs. Brooks, he said, his voice hard. Now, or I will physically remove you. I am not leaving without my granddaughter. Vernice screamed, trying to pull away. At that moment, the school doors opened. A teacher walked out, holding Maya's hand. Maya looked at the scene, her big brown eyes wide with confusion. She saw her grandmother being dragged away by security. She saw me standing there looking like a statue. Grandma, Maya asked, her voice small. Don't look, baby, I said, rushing over to her and scooping her up into my arms. I buried her face in my shoulder so she would not see the shame of her legacy being dragged to the curb. Vernice was still screaming as they pushed her toward the street. You will pay for this, Tiana. You will burn in hell. I watched her go, feeling a strange mixture of sorrow and relief. I turned to the headmaster, who was still in shock. I am sorry for the disruption, I said, adjusting Maya on my hip. Mrs. Brooks, the headmaster, stammered. We had no idea. I know, I said. I reached into my bag and pulled out a thick envelope. Jessica had prepared it this morning. This is a permanent restraining order signed by a judge an hour ago, I said, handing it to him. It bars Vernice Brooks and Andre Brooks from coming within 500 feet of this school, my home, or my daughter. If she shows up here again, do not call me. Call the police. The headmaster took the papers, nodding vigorously. It will be enforced immediately. We will update the security protocols. I walked back to my car carrying my daughter. The other parents parted like the Red Sea, making a path for us. There were no more whispers, no more side eyes, just a silent, respectful acknowledgement of what had just happened. They had seen a woman stand between her child and a pack of wolves, and they knew in that primal way that all parents know that I had won. I buckled Maya into her car seat. She looked at me, her eyes searching my face. Is Grandma in timeout? She asked innocently. Yes, baby, I said, kissing her forehead. Grandma is in a very long timeout. I got into the driver's seat and locked the doors. As I drove away, leaving the chaos behind, I looked in the rearview mirror. Vernice was sitting on the curb outside the gate, weeping into her hands. She was alone. Her son was facing prison. Her house was about to be foreclosed, and the family she had tried to sell for a payout had just closed its doors to her forever. She had enabled a monster because she thought it would make her rich. Instead, she had bankrupted her soul. I turned onto the main road, the recording still queued up on my phone. I deleted it from the playlist. I did not need to hear it again. The world had heard it. And now everyone knew exactly what the Brooks family was made of. But the war was not over. Andre was still desperate. And a desperate man with nothing left to lose was the most dangerous creature on earth. He had one card left to play. He had Omega. And I knew that tonight the final trap would be sprung. The Omni Hotel ballroom was dripping in crystal and pretension, the kind of venue where Atlanta's black elite gathered to pat themselves on the back and write checks that would be tax-deductible. The air smelled of expensive perfume and even more expensive ambition. At the center of it all, standing on a stage illuminated by a single dramatic spotlight, was my husband. Andre looked impeccable in a tuxedo that I had bought him for our anniversary last year. He was pacing the stage, holding a microphone with the casual confidence of a Steve Jobs wannabe, pitching his tech startup to a room full of venture capitalists and angel investors. To anyone else, he looked like a visionary. He spoke about disrupting the market, about proprietary algorithms and scalability. He used all the right buzzwords, weaving a story of a company on the verge of $1 billion valuation. But from where I stood hidden in the shadows of the velvet curtains near the entrance, I saw him for what he really was. A desperate man dancing on the edge of a volcano. I adjusted the strap of my emerald green gown. It was a dress Andre had always told me was too bold, too revealing, too much. Tonight it was my armor. I was not here as the grieving wife or the scorned woman. I was here as the executioner. Andre was closing his pitch. We are looking for a bridge round of $2 million, he said, flashing that $1 million smile that used to make my knees weak. This capital will allow us to expand our infrastructure and dominate the Southeast region. The returns will be exponential. The room murmured with approval. I saw heads nodding at the VIP table near the front. That was where the sharks sat. The heavy hitters of Atlanta's investment scene, men and women who could write a 7-figure check without blinking. Andre needed them. He needed their money to pay off the debt I had secretly purchased. He needed their money to flee the country. I took a deep breath and stepped out of the shadows. The click of my heels on the marble floor was lost under the sound of Andre's voice. But as I moved into the light, heads began to turn. I walked with a slow, deliberate cadence, my chin high, my eyes locked on the VIP table. I did not look at the stage. I did not acknowledge the man who had tried to end my life. I was a ghost haunting his moment of glory. Andre faltered. Just for a split second. He saw me. His eyes widened and his hand tightened around the microphone. He missed a beat in his speech, stumbling over the word revenue, but he recovered quickly, forcing a laugh. "We have some late arrivals, folks. But as I was saying, our growth strategy is foolproof." I reached the VIP table. 5 men and 2 women sat there nursing scotch and champagne. They looked up at me with curiosity. They knew who I was. The rumors about our divorce had been circulating in the country clubs all week. They expected a scene. They expected a drink thrown in a face or a screaming match. I gave them neither. "Good evening, gentlemen, ladies," I said, my voice soft but steel. "I hope you are enjoying the fiction my husband is spinning up there." One of the investors, a man named Marcus, who had known my father, frowned. "Tiana, this is not the time for domestic disputes." "I am not here to dispute anything, Marcus," I said, reaching into my clutch. "I am here to save you money." I pulled out 5 thin envelopes. Inside each one was a single sheet of paper, a summary of a forensic audit conducted by the FBI and my private team. It showed the shell companies. It showed the laundering. And most importantly, it showed that Andre's tech startup had 0 revenue, 0 proprietary technology, and $3 million in debt, held by a company called Phoenix Financial. I slid the envelopes across the tablecloth. "You might want to check the due diligence before you write that check," I whispered. "Unless you enjoy investing in federal indictments." I turned and walked away. I did not wait for them to read it. I did not need to. I walked to the bar at the back of the room and ordered a sparkling water. I turned around just in time to watch the dominoes fall. Marcus was the first to open the envelope. I saw his face go slack. He put on his reading glasses, scanning the document. Then he handed it to the woman next to him. A ripple of shock went through the table. They began to whisper, pointing at the paper, then pointing at the stage. Andre was sweating now. He could feel the energy in the room shift. The attentive silence had turned into a restless murmur. "So, if anyone has any questions," Andre stammered, loosening his bow tie. Marcus stood up. He did not ask a question. He did not raise his hand. He simply buttoned his jacket, signaled to the rest of the table, and walked toward the exit. The other 6 investors stood up and followed him. "Wait," Andre called out, his voice rising in panic. "Marcus, we haven't discussed the equity split." Marcus stopped near the door. He looked back at the stage, his expression filled with disgust. "There is no equity, Andre, and frankly, I do not do business with frauds." The word hung in the air like smoke. Fraud. The rest of the room froze. The smaller investors, the ones who followed the sharks, began to look at each other nervously. If Marcus was walking, the deal was dead. Chairs scraped against the floor as more people began to stand up. Andre stood alone on the stage, the spotlight now feeling like an interrogation lamp. He looked frantic, his eyes darting around the room, searching for a lifeline. Then he looked at me. I raised my glass in a silent toast. That was when the sound began. It started as a single ping from the podium where Andre had left his phone, then another, then a rapid-fire succession of vibrations and chimes that echoed through the microphone system. Ding, 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 ding. Andre looked down at his phone. The screen was lighting up with notifications. I knew exactly what they were. I had timed it perfectly with Jessica and the forensic team. Bank of America, account frozen. Suspicious activity. Chase private client assets seized by federal order. American Express credit line revoked. Andre picked up the phone, swiping frantically. He was tapping the screen, trying to log into his banking apps, trying to stop the bleeding. But it was too late. The system had locked him out. His digital life was being erased in real time. "Is there a technical problem?" someone from the audience heckled. Andre looked up, his face pale and slick with sweat. "No," he croaked. "Just a misunderstanding. Please, everyone sit down." But no one sat down. The spell was broken. The Emperor had no clothes, and thanks to the papers circulating the room, everyone knew he had no money either. The murmurs grew into laughter. cruel upper-crust laughter. They were not laughing with him. They were laughing at the man who thought he could trick them. I watched him unravel. The charismatic speaker dissolved into a trembling, angry child. He gripped the podium so hard his knuckles turned white. He yelled into the microphone, "You are making a mistake. My technology is revolutionary." "Sir, step away from the mic," the event coordinator said, walking onto the stage to cut the audio feed. Andre pulled away, looking wild. He scanned the room one last time and locked eyes with me at the bar. The hatred on his face was visceral. He knew I had poisoned the well. He knew I had locked the accounts. He jumped off the stage, ignoring the stares, and started marching toward me. The crowd parted, sensing violence. He looked like a bull seeing red. "You did this!" he screamed, pointing a finger at me. "You crazy witch! You ruined everything." I did not flinch. I did not move. I just waited. Because I knew something Andre did not. I knew that the large man in the dark suit standing 5 feet to my left was not a waiter. Andre lunged at me, reaching for my throat. Before he could touch me, the man in the dark suit stepped in. With a fluid practice motion, he grabbed Andre's arm, twisted it behind his back, and slammed him face first onto the bar counter. Glasses shattered. Ice scattered across the floor. "Federal agent," the man shouted. "Andre Brooks, do not move." Another agent materialized from the crowd, cuffing Andre's other hand. "What is this? Get off me!" Andre yelled, struggling against the weight of the agent. "I am a businessman. This is assault." "Andre Brooks, you are being detained for questioning regarding wire fraud and violation of the RICO Act," the agent recited, pulling Andre upright. The ballroom was dead silent. Every phone was out. Every camera was recording. Andre, with a piece of lime garnish stuck to his cheek and his expensive tuxedo rumpled, looked around at the society he had tried so hard to impress. He saw their phones. He saw their sneers. He saw his reputation turning into a viral video. And then he saw me. I took a sip of my sparkling water and set the glass down on the bar right next to his face. "I told you, Andre," I whispered, leaning in close so only he could hear. "I do not want half. I want it all." The agents dragged him toward the exit, his shoes dragging on the carpet, his protests growing weaker and more pathetic with every step. I watched him go until the heavy double doors swallowed him up. The room remained quiet for a heartbeat longer, and then the chatter exploded. The gossip was instantaneous. I stood there for a moment, letting the adrenaline wash over me. I had humiliated him. I had bankrupted him. I had destroyed his social standing. But as I looked at the exit, I felt a chill. The agents had detained him, yes. But they hadn't arrested him. Not officially. They were taking him in for questioning. They were squeezing him. They were going to release him. I knew the plan. Agent Miller had been clear. They needed Andre to panic. They needed him to be so desperate, so broken, and so terrified of prison that he would make the one call he had been avoiding. They needed him to call Omega. I picked up my clutch and walked toward the door. The show was over, but the hunt was just beginning. Andre was going to walk out of that interrogation room tonight with nothing left in his name but a quarter tank of gas and a burner phone. And I knew exactly who he would call. I walked out into the cool Atlanta night, the sound of the gala fading behind me. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Jessica. "Bait is taken. He is in custody. They will cut him loose in 2 hours." I typed back a single word. "Ready." I got into my car and drove into the darkness. Andre thought he had hit rock bottom. He was wrong. Rock bottom was where I was waiting for him. And I had brought a shovel. The rain battered the windows of the safe house, a relentless rhythm that matched the pounding of my own heart. It was 2 a.m. The FBI agents had released Andre 3 hours ago, just as we planned. They had stripped him of his passport, frozen his assets, and tossed him back onto the streets of Atlanta with nothing but the clothes on his back and a burning desire for revenge. We sat in the living room, Trey and I, watching the surveillance feed on the laptop. We were waiting for him to call his offshore banker. We were waiting for him to try and access the hidden crypto wallets. But we were wrong. Andre did not call a banker. He called me. The phone on the coffee table buzzed, lighting up the dark room. The caller ID was blocked, but I knew. I felt it in my bones. Trey looked at me, his hand instantly moving to his earpiece to alert the team outside. "Put it on speaker," he whispered. I swiped the screen and answered. I said nothing. I just listened to the heavy, ragged breathing on the other end. "Hello," Tiana, Andre's voice rasped. It sounded wet, like he had been crying or screaming, or both. "Did you enjoy your little show at the gala? Did you enjoy watching them drag me out?" "I ended it, Andre," I said calmly. "It is over. Turn yourself in." He laughed, a high-pitched manic sound that made the hair on my arms stand up. "Over. No, baby. It is not over. You took my money. You took my reputation. You took my life. So now I am going to take something of yours." I frowned. He could not touch Maya. She was asleep in the next room, guarded by an armed agent. He could not touch my business. What did he have left? "I am at the old textile warehouse in East Point," Andre said. "You know the one. Where I told you I was going to build my headquarters. I am here with an old friend. Say hello, Sasha." There was a scuffle on the line, the sound of fabric tearing, and then a woman's scream. It was muffled, terrified, and undeniably Sasha. "Please, Mrs. Brooks. He has a gun. He is crazy." My blood ran cold. He had gone to her. He must have tracked her down the moment he was released, thinking she would help him. When he realized she had turned on him, he snapped. He had taken her hostage. And probably the baby, too. "Listen to me, Andre," I said, my voice dropping to a deadly whisper. "Let her go. She has nothing to do with this. She has everything to do with this," Andre roared. "She betrayed me too. Everyone betrayed me. But you can fix it, Tiana. You are the only one who can fix it. I want $1 million. Cash. Unmarked bills. You have 2 hours to bring it to the warehouse. Alone. If I see a cop, if I see a blue light, I will put a bullet in her head, and then I will save the last one for myself. Do you understand?" I looked at Trey. He was already signaling to the team, mouthing the words hostage situation and SWAT. "I understand," I said. 2 hours, Tiana. Tick-tock. The line went dead. Trey jumped up, grabbing his tactical vest. "We are rolling out. We have his location. I will get the tactical team to surround the perimeter. We will have a negotiator on the bullhorn in 20 minutes. "No," I said. Trey stopped, looking at me like I had lost my mind. "Tiana, this is a hostage situation. He has a gun. He has a civilian. We follow protocol." "Protocol will get her killed," I said, standing up. "I know him, Trey. He has hit rock bottom. He feels humiliated. If he sees police lights, if he sees a negotiator, he will pull that trigger just to prove he still has power. He wants to go out in a blaze of glory. He wants to punish me." "So, what do you want to do?" Trey asked, frustration etched on his face. "You cannot go in there alone. I will not let you." "I am not taking him money," I said, walking to my briefcase on the desk. "I am taking him something he wants more than money. I am taking him an exit strategy." I pulled out a document I had prepared weeks ago with Jessica. It was a relinquishment of parental rights form. It was a legal document that, once signed, would sever all legal ties between Andre and Maya. It would grant me full, uncontested custody. It would mean he could never see her, speak to her, or claim her again. "Tiana." "That is suicide," Trey argued. "He wants cash to run. He does not care about custody papers. He cares about freedom." I corrected. "I am going to offer him a deal. He signs this, and I give him the keys to the helicopter." "There is no helicopter," Trey said. He does not know that I replied. "I need you to set up a perimeter, Trey, but stay back, way back. Give me 15 minutes inside. If I do not walk out, or if you hear a shot, then you breach. But give me the chance to end this without blood." Trey looked at me for a long, agonizing minute. He saw the resolve in my eyes. He saw the sister who had raised him when our parents were working double shifts. He saw the woman who had just dismantled a criminal empire in 48 hours. 15 minutes, he said, his voice tight. And I am wearing an earpiece. If you say the code word, I am coming through that door with the entire Atlanta PD behind me. I nodded. Deal. I drove to the warehouse in silence. The rain had turned into a torrential downpour, washing the city in a gray, gritty film. The streets of East Point were deserted. Industrial skeletons of abandoned factories loomed on either side of the road. This was the graveyard of ambition, a fitting place for Andre's last stand. I pulled into the gravel lot of the old textile mill. It was a massive brick structure with broken windows that looked like jagged teeth. A single light bulb flickered above the loading dock door. Andre's car, a rental sedan, was parked haphazardly near the entrance. I cut the engine. I sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel. I was terrified. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me to turn around to drive back to the safety of the suburbs. But then I thought of Maya. I thought of the years of manipulation. I thought of the hitman he hired. If I did not finish this tonight, he would haunt us forever. Even from prison, he would find a way. I needed him to sign that paper. I needed to cut the cord legally, permanently, and absolutely. I grabbed the folder and stepped out into the rain. I did not bring an umbrella. I let the water soak my clothes, let the cold sharpen my senses. I walked to the heavy metal door and pushed it open. The inside of the warehouse smelled of rust and mildew. It was a cavernous space filled with shadows and the sound of dripping water. In the center of the room, illuminated by a portable construction light, sat a wooden chair. Sasha was tied to it. Her mouth was gagged with duct tape. Her eyes were wide with terror, pleading with me to run. Andre stood behind her. He had ditched the tuxedo jacket. His white shirt was stained with sweat and dirt. He held the gun to Sasha's temple, his hand shaking violently. "You came?" he called out, his voice echoing off the metal rafters. "Where is the money?" I walked forward, stopping 10 feet away. I held my hands up, showing him I was unarmed. "I did not bring the money, Andre." His face twisted in rage. He pressed the gun harder against Sasha's head. She whimpered. "I told you 1 million. Do you think I am playing games? I will kill her. I swear to God, I will kill her right now." And then what? I asked, keeping my voice steady, projecting calm. "I did not feel. You shoot her. Then what, Andre? You think you are walking out of here? My brother has this building surrounded. There are snipers on the roof across the street. There are SWAT teams at every exit. The moment you pull that trigger, you are a dead man." Andre looked around wildly, scanning the dark windows high above. He was paranoid. He was breaking. "So you came here to watch me die," he spat. "I came here to offer you a trade," I said. I took a step closer. "The police want you for the money laundering. They want you for the wire fraud. But attempted murder, that is a life sentence, Andre. That is death row in Georgia." "I am already dead," he screamed. "You took everything." I held up the blue folder. "I can make the attempted murder charge go away." He froze. "What? I spoke to the district attorney. I lied. I told them I might have been mistaken about the hitman. I told them maybe it was a misunderstanding. Without my testimony, the conspiracy charge falls apart. You do just time for the financial crimes. 5 years. Maybe 3 with good behavior." Andre lowered the gun an inch. He was listening. He was desperate for a lifeline. "And what do you want?" he asked suspiciously. I tossed the folder onto the wet concrete floor between us. It slid to his feet. "I want Maya," I said. "Completely. I want you to sign your rights away. You acknowledge you are unfit. You give me full legal and physical custody. You never contact us again. You sign that and I walk out of here and tell the police you surrendered. I tell them Sasha was not a hostage, she was just here talking." He looked down at the folder. Then he looked at Sasha. Then he looked at me. 3 years, he asked. "If you sign," I said. "If you shoot her, it is over. You die tonight." Andre hesitated. I could see the wheels turning in his mind. The narcissist in him wanted to live. He thought he could survive 3 years in minimum security. He thought he could come back. He did not know that the FBI had enough evidence to bury him for 50 years regardless of what I said. He did not know I was lying about the deal. I was just buying Sasha's life with a signature. He slowly moved the gun away from Sasha's head. He bent down to pick up the folder. Sasha squeezed her eyes shut, tears leaking out. She knew how close she had come to the end. Andre opened the folder. He saw the pen I had clipped inside. He looked at me one last time, a sneer curling his lip. "You really think you are winning, don't you?" he muttered. "You think you can buy me off with a plea deal?" "I am not buying you off, Andre," I said coldly. "I am taking out the trash." He scoffed and clicked the pen. He leaned the folder against his knee and scribbled his signature on the line. He threw the folder back at me. "There," he said. "Now call off your dogs." I picked up the folder. I checked the signature. It was done. Maya was safe. Legally, forever safe. I looked at Andre. I looked at the gun still in his hand. "Thank you," I said. Then I tapped my ear. "Go." The windows shattered. Not from snipers but from flashbang grenades thrown by the tactical team that had breached the rear entrance while we were talking. Bang! Flash! A blinding white light filled the warehouse, followed by a deafening boom. Andre screamed, dropping the gun and covering his ears. "Move, move, move!" Men in black armor poured into the room from every shadow. Andre was tackled to the ground before he could blink. "You lied." He screamed, his face pressed into the wet concrete. "You lied to me." I walked over to Sasha. I used a pocket knife to cut the tape on her wrists. She fell into my arms, sobbing uncontrollably. I looked down at Andre as they cuffed him. "I learned from the best," I whispered. I held the custody papers tight against my chest. The nightmare was over. He was going to prison for the rest of his life, and he had just signed away the only thing he could have used to hurt me from the inside. "Let's go home," I said to Sasha. We walked out into the rain, leaving the shouting and the sirens behind us. The air tasted sweet. It tasted like freedom. The warehouse smelled of wet rust and desperation. Rain hammered against the corrugated metal roof, drowning out everything except the ragged, frantic breathing of the man who used to share my bed. Andre stood in the center of the cavernous space, illuminated by a single flickering construction light. He looked nothing like the suave entrepreneur who had charmed Atlanta society. His eyes were wild, rimmed with red, and his expensive shirt was soaked through with sweat and grime. In his trembling hand he held a gun pressed against the temple of Sasha, who was bound to a wooden chair, her mascara running in dark streaks down her terrified face. "Stop right there!" Andre screamed, his voice cracking. "Do not take another step, Tiana. I mean it. I will blow her brains out. I have nothing left to lose." I stopped 10 feet away from him, letting the water drip from my trench coat onto the concrete floor. I did not raise my hands in surrender. I did not beg. I simply looked at him with the cold, detached curiosity of a scientist observing a specimen under a microscope. He was vibrating with fear, a cornered animal lashing out at the walls of a trap he had built for himself. "You have one thing left to lose, Andre," I said, my voice steady and amplified by the emptiness of the building. "Your freedom. Freedom." He laughed, a sharp, hysterical sound that grated on my nerves. "You took that away when you froze my accounts. You took that away when you turned my mother against me. The only way I am leaving here is in a body bag or on a flight to Rio. Where is the money? Did you bring the cash?" "I did not bring the money," I said. He tightened his grip on the gun. Sasha whimpered, squeezing her eyes shut. "I told you," he roared. $1 million or she dies." "I brought you something better," I interrupted, reaching slowly into my coat. I pulled out a blue legal folder. "I brought you a clean slate." Andre blinked, confusion momentarily cutting through his panic. "What is that?" I took a step forward, ignoring the way the gun barrel wavered in my direction. "This is a relinquishment of parental rights. It is a legal document that states you voluntarily terminate your relationship with Maya. It grants me sole legal and physical custody. You will never see her again. You will never speak to her again. You will be a stranger to her. He scoffed. You think I care about custody right now? I am trying to survive. Exactly, I said. And this is your ticket out. I have a helicopter waiting in the field behind the warehouse. It is fueled and ready to take you to a private airfield in Alabama. From there, a charter jet will take you to a non-extradition country. But the pilot does not take off until I send the signal. And I do not send the signal until you sign this paper. Andre looked at the folder, then at the dark exit door behind him. He wanted to believe it. He needed to believe it. The narcissist in him could not accept that he had lost. He had to believe that he was still important enough to warrant a helicopter escape. You are lying, he hissed. I shrugged. Then shoot her. And when the SWAT team that is currently setting up a perimeter outside hears the gunshot, they will storm this building and turn you into Swiss cheese. Is that how you want to go out? Or do you want to wake up on a beach tomorrow morning? The silence stretched heavy and suffocating. I could see the gears turning in his head. He looked at Sasha, the woman he had promised to love, the woman carrying his second child. In that moment I saw the exact measure of his soul. He did not care about her. He did not care about me. He did not care about Maya. He only cared about Andre. Give me the pen, he said hoarsely. I tossed the folder and a pen onto the wet floor between us. He did not let go of Sasha. He kept the gun trained on her as he crouched down awkwardly, fumbling with the paper. He scribbled his name on the signature line, a jagged, messy scrawl that signed away his right to ever be a father again. "It is done!" he shouted, kicking the folder back toward me. "Now tell them to clear the air. I am leaving." I picked up the folder. I checked the signature. It was valid. I checked the date. It was perfect. I closed the folder and held it against my chest like a shield. "Thank you, Andre," I said softly. He grabbed Sasha by the hair, dragging her upright. "I am taking her to the chopper. If I see one cop, she dies." "You do not need her," I said. "The pilot is waiting. Just go." He hesitated, then shoved Sasha to the ground. She scrambled away, crawling toward me on her hands and knees. Andre turned and ran toward the rear exit, his footsteps pounding against the concrete. He slammed his shoulder into the metal bar, bursting out into the night air, ready to ascend into the sky and escape the wreckage of his life. But there was no wind from rotor blades. There was no helicopter. There was only light. Blinding, searing white light from the floodlights of 10 armored police vehicles. Freeze! Federal agents dropped the weapon. The command boomed over a loudspeaker, shaking the very ground. Andre froze, his arm raised to shield his eyes. He was bathed in the harsh illumination, exposed, vulnerable, and utterly alone. Red laser dots danced across his chest, a dozen snipers locking onto their target. He spun around, looking back into the warehouse, looking for me. I stood in the doorway, Sasha clinging to my legs. I watched his face crumble. The realization hit him with the force of a physical blow. There was no deal. There was no escape. I had tricked him. I had used his own greed and desperation to get the one thing I wanted most. Maya was mine, and he was nothing. He dropped the gun. It clattered onto the asphalt. He fell to his knees, defeated, as the SWAT team swarmed him. I watched as they zip-tied his hands behind his back. I watched as they dragged him toward the waiting van. He looked up one last time, his eyes meeting mine across the distance. He screamed something, but the sound was lost in the wail of sirens. It was over. The monster was in a cage, and I held the key to my daughter's future in my hands. 3 months later, the air in the conference room of the downtown law firm was cool and smelled of expensive coffee. It was a stark contrast to the damp, rotting smell of the warehouse. I sat at the head of the table, Jessica to my right. On the large, flat-screen monitor on the wall, Andre sat in an orange jumpsuit. He looked thinner. The arrogance that had defined him was gone, replaced by a sullen, bitter anger. His lawyer, a court-appointed public defender, who looked overworked and exhausted, sat beside him. "Mr. Brooks is requesting a final review of the division of assets," the public defender said, shuffling through his papers. Despite his incarceration, he maintains that the Buckhead estate is marital property and demands his 50% share of the equity to pay for his legal defense and restitution. I took a sip of my coffee, feeling the warmth spread through my chest. Andre was serving a life sentence for kidnapping, extortion, and conspiracy to commit murder. And yet even from behind bars, he was trying to claw back a piece of the life he had tried to destroy. He still believed he was entitled to the kingdom he had lived in. Jessica cleared her throat. She opened a thick binder and slid a single document across the table toward the camera, though Andre could only see it on his screen. Mr. Brooks seems to be under a persistent misapprehension regarding the ownership of the property at 4200 Tuxedo Road, Jessica said, her voice crisp and professional. Andre leaned into the camera, his eyes narrowing. I bought that house with her, he spat. My name is on the mortgage. Actually, it isn't. Jessica corrected. Your name was on the mortgage application, which was denied due to your poor credit score 7 years ago. Tiana purchased the home. However, what you also failed to realize during your 7 years of residence is that Tiana did not purchase the home in her own name. I watched Andre's face. He was confused. The deed to the property, Jessica continued, is held by the Maya Brooks Irrevocable Trust. Trust, Andre muttered. What trust? The trust established by Tiana's late mother Estelle 2 weeks before she passed away. I spoke up for the first time. My mother never trusted you, Andre. She knew you were a grifter from the day you walked into our lives. So when she left me her inheritance, she tied it up so tight that you could never touch a dime. The down payment for the house came from her estate. The monthly mortgage payments were paid by the trust. I leaned forward, looking directly into the camera lens, looking into the eyes of the man who had tried to kill me for money. You never owned that house, Andre. You were a guest. You were a squatter living in my daughter's property. The cars leased by the trust. The furniture owned by the trust. Even the watch you are wearing in your mugshot was purchased with a credit card linked to the trust. Andre slumped back in his chair. The fight went out of him. The last shred of his delusion, the belief that he had contributed something, that he owned something, evaporated. So I get nothing, he whispered. You get exactly what you earned, I said. And speaking of housing, Jessica added, closing the binder, we thought you should know about your mother. Andre's head snapped up. Vernice. What about her? Since she used her home as collateral for your bail bond, and since you violated the terms of that bail by kidnapping a woman and holding her hostage, the bond was forfeited, Jessica explained without an ounce of sympathy. The state seized her house yesterday. She has been evicted. No, Andre gasped. That was her retirement. Where is she? I believe she has been placed in a state-subsidized housing facility in Bankhead, I said. It is a small efficiency apartment. I hear it is very cozy. Andre put his head in his hands. He began to weep. Not for me, not for Maya, but for the total absolute annihilation of his legacy. He had tried to steal $5 million. Instead, he had lost his freedom, his family, his mother's home, and his dignity. I stood up. The meeting is adjourned, I said. I walked out of the conference room, leaving the image of my weeping ex-husband on the screen. I walked down the hallway past the rows of framed accolades and out into the bright Atlanta sunshine. The city looked different today. It looked cleaner, brighter. I checked my phone. I had a text from Sasha. She was in therapy, doing better. She sent a picture of her baby playing with a new toy. And below that, a text from Trey. He was coming over for dinner tonight to grill steaks. I got into my car and drove toward the school to pick up Maya. As I pulled up to the curb, I saw her running toward me, her backpack bouncing, her smile bright and unburdened. She did not know about the warehouse. She did not know about the helicopter that never existed. She only knew that she was safe and that she was loved. I hugged her tight, breathing in the scent of her hair. Mommy, are we going home? She asked. Yes, baby, I said, smiling as tears of relief finally pricked my eyes. We are going home. To your house. And as we drove away, leaving the shadows of the past behind us, I knew that the real victory wasn't the money or the house or the lawsuit. The real victory was the peace that settled in the empty spaces where the fear used to live. We had walked through the fire, and we had come out the other side not just survivors, but owners of our own destiny. And that was a wealth that no one could ever steal. The water in the Maldives is not just blue. It is a living, breathing turquoise that seems to wash away the gray film of trauma that had coated my skin for the last 6 months. I sat on a white lounge chair, digging my toes into sand that felt like powdered sugar. The air smelled of salt and jasmine, a stark contrast to the scent of rust and fear that had defined my life back in Atlanta. 10 feet away, near the gentle lapping of the surf, Maya was building a sandcastle. She was singing to herself a little melody she had made up about a crab named Mr. Pinchy. She looked healthy. The shadows under her eyes were gone. The fear that had made her flinch at loud noises was fading, replaced by the resilience of childhood. She was wearing a bright yellow swimsuit, looking like a drop of sunshine against the endless ocean. Next to me, under the shade of a large umbrella, Trey was asleep. My brother, the protector, the detective who never slept, was finally resting. His chest rose and fell in a steady rhythm, a paperback novel resting on his stomach. He had taken a month of leave from the force. He said it was to protect us, but I knew he needed to heal too. Betrayal does not just hurt the person who is betrayed, it hurts everyone who loves them. I took a sip of my iced tea, letting the condensation drip down my hand. It was peaceful here. It was expensive, yes. The private villa, the first-class flights, the security detail that was discreetly stationed around the perimeter of the resort. It was costing a fortune. But freedom is expensive. Peace of mind is the greatest luxury in the world, and I had paid for it in cash, sweat, and tears. My phone, which I had left on the small teak table, vibrated. It was a long, sustained buzz. I stared at it for a moment. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Part of me wanted to throw it into the ocean and never look at a screen again. But I knew what this message was. I had been waiting for it for 3 days. The jury had been deliberating since Tuesday. I picked up the phone. The screen was bright against the shade. It was a text from Jessica. "Verdict is in, call me." I did not call her. I did not want to break the silence of the beach. I texted back 2 words. "Tell me." 3 dots danced on the screen. I held my breath, watching Maya place a seashell on top of her castle. I thought about Andre. I thought about the man I had married. I thought about the father who had held Maya when she was born. I wondered if he was thinking about us right now, or if he was only thinking about himself. The message popped up. Guilty on all counts. Conspiracy to commit capital murder, kidnapping, wire fraud, money laundering. The judge gave him life without parole plus 30 years. He will die in prison, Tiana. It is over. I read it again. Life without parole. There would be no appeal hearings in 10 years. There would be no parole board meetings where I had to beg them to keep him locked up. He was gone. He was erased. The state of Georgia had just closed the book on Andre Brooks. A second message appeared. Sasha got 5 years probation. She testified beautifully. She cried on the stand when she talked about the baby. The jury felt sorry for her. She is entering witness protection tomorrow. I lowered the phone. I felt a tear slide down my cheek, hot and fast. It was not a tear of sadness. It was a tear of release. It was the physical manifestation of a weight being lifted off my shoulders, a weight I hadn't realized was crushing me until it was gone. Tiana. I looked up. Trey was awake. He was looking at me, his eyes hidden behind sunglasses, but his posture alert. He saw the phone in my hand. He saw the tear. "Is it done?" he asked softly. I nodded, unable to speak. "What did he get?" "Life," I whispered. "He got life." Trey let out a long breath, a sound that was half sigh, half laugh. He reached over and squeezed my hand. His grip was strong and warm. "He cannot hurt you anymore, T. He is buried." I looked at Maya. She had finished her castle and was now chasing a seagull, her laughter carrying on the breeze. She would grow up without a father. That was a tragedy. But she would grow up without a monster. That was a blessing. She would never know the fear of walking on eggshells. She would never know the manipulation. She would only know that she was loved and that her mother and uncle would burn the world down to keep her safe. I picked up my phone one last time. I opened the gallery. There was a photo of me and Andre from 7 years ago taken on our honeymoon. We looked so happy, so young. I looked at his smile, the smile that had fooled everyone. I selected the photo. Delete. I went to my contacts. Andre Brooks. Delete. I went to my blocked numbers. Delete. I set the phone down face down. The digital cord was cut. The past was deleted. I stood up and walked down to the water's edge. The ocean water was warm as it rushed over my feet, pulling the sand out from under my toes. I looked out at the horizon where the blue sky met the blue water in a seamless line. I thought about that night in the kitchen, the smell of the roasting turkey, the sound of the sirens, the voice on the phone asking me the question that started it all. He had called me to ask where I was. He wanted my location. He wanted to know if I was in the kitchen, if I was in the garage, if I was in the trap he had set for me. He wanted to pinpoint my coordinates so he could send a killer to erase my existence. He thought he was the hunter. He thought he held the map. But he forgot one thing. He forgot who he was dealing with. He forgot that you do not corner a woman who has built her life from nothing. You should never ask a woman where she is unless you are ready to hear the answer. Because if Andre could ask me right now, if he could pick up a phone in his concrete cell and ask me where I am, I would tell him the truth. I am not in the kitchen. I am not in the garage. I am not in the grave you dug for me. I am standing in the sun. I am standing on the sand that cost more than your life insurance policy. I am standing on a foundation of truth that you could never understand. And most importantly, Andre, I am standing on the ruins of your life. I turned back to look at my family. Trey was smiling at me, raising his coconut in a toast. Maya ran toward me, her arms open wide, crashing into my legs with a wet, sandy hug. "Mommy, look, I made a castle for us," she squealed. I looked at her masterpiece. It was lopsided, it was messy, the tide would wash it away in an hour, but it was beautiful because she made it. "It is perfect, baby," I said, picking her up and spinning her around just like Andre used to do, but better. Because this spin was real. This love was real. I am Tiana Brooks. I am a survivor. I am a mother. And for the first time in 7 years, I am free. Thank you for listening to my story. If you have ever had to fight for your freedom, if you have ever had to stand up to someone who tried to make you small, I want you to know that you are not alone. The fight is hard, the nights are long, but the view from the other side, it is worth every penny. Please like this video if you believe in justice. Subscribe to the channel for more stories of survival. And share this with someone who needs to be reminded that their story does not end when someone else tries to close the book. Your story ends when you say it ends. And mine is just beginning.